Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name's Simon Hodgkins. Today, it's a pleasure to be joined by Shaman Isis. Shaman, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to tell people a little bit about your journey and everything that you're involved in today. So over to you.
Thank you, Simon. I first have to start by saying thank you so much for having me on your amazing show. What incredible guests you've had. So thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Elliott, but everybody calls me Shaman Isis. I am a spiritual leader and emotional mastery mentor. I help people figure out how to get command of their emotions so that they can create a reality that they really love. I spent 20 years in the marketing and PR field, founded a few industries there before I had a really transformative life experience that told me that the direction I needed to move in was helping other people learn how to be happier and more blissful. So that's a little bit about me.
And help me unpack a little bit about this sort of emotional mastery, because look, you're a communications pioneer, if I can use that term. You're obviously a podcast host. You're an author. You're an adjunct professor. You do lots of things. You have a career background that many people listening to this would be somewhat familiar with. But you're really helping now everything from brands, executives, individuals, and really wrapped around this. I think you created something called the 5 minutes to emotional mastery. So can you just maybe unpack that a little bit for our audience today?
Sure. Absolutely. I spent a really long time in my own personal life focusing on nothing but my career. And I had an incredible career. I founded influencer marketing for those who are listening who find that kind of thing very interesting, as well as brand communications. But during that whole process, while I was being great at disrupting the culture, I personally didn't focus on my own mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health. And so during all of that, it was like running constantly. I was exhausted. And when I one day woke up and realized that I needed to change my life drastically and went through this incredible transformation seeking, like many of us do when we want to transform our lives, and found this incredible process to emotional mastery. I really understood that I was being gifted something that I needed to share with other people. And as a communications pioneer, I'm perfectly like sort of set up for that kind of thing. It's like I've written, I've been on a lot of TV shows and things like that. And it's like, you know what, I've been primed for this my whole life. And because of the mental health crisis that we're having globally, we've got 1 billion people who are struggling with mental health. Um, We've had a 50% increase in young people dealing with depression in 3 years. And so I started to really understand that this was a mission that I was being given, and I laid it all out. And when I saw it all laid out, I was like, wow, this is incredible, because I've actually come up with a method that allows people to get command of their life experience and to understand the power they have over creating their own reality. So I wrote my first book, Unleash the Empress. I changed my career dramatically. I came up with the 5 minutes to emotional mastery method, and started my podcast, the Shaman Isis Show. And it's been an incredible journey. And the people that I've been able to help, it feeds my soul, and it makes me feel so wonderful to be a part of this massive shift all over the planet towards a better, higher levels of consciousness, and us finally stepping forward to take care of our people on our planet. So that's really kind of like, that's a little bit of the rundown of how I got here.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know you kind of weave the two, because you you have this sort of chief executive officer, which is Dreamweaver Brand Communications, which has been around for, I don't know, 10, 11 more years at this stage. But you also have this, well, I also want to talk to you about sustainable fashion. Maybe we'll come on to that in a moment too. But you have this now, this fully sort of rounded mindfulness education, this mentoring. And how do you balance your time now? Are you sort of all in on that, or do you still work in some of maybe the previous type of work?
Oh, I'm fully committed to being a mindfulness educator and teaching other people. And I do that through individuals or through businesses. So I still use all the skills that I developed as an agency founder, I'm just sort of moving into the future, and I believe the future of business and people's lives is going to be about personal mastery, about living lives that are fulfilling, that make people really excited about life, make them want to hop out of bed and get going in the morning. And so I can do that. That I can teach that to people or through workshops. Or to businesses, so that their companies run better. Because when your people are emotionally intelligent and understand the power they have over creation, over creating not only their own life, but about being an impactful source in their own work, and seeking out to do the things that give them pleasure and passion, it benefits everyone, because you don't want anybody around who wants to do something else. And the people that are going to be around, whether it's in their own personal lives or in a business that you run, you want them to be fulfilled and passionate about life. And so, it all really does come together. For me, it doesn't matter if the crowd is one person or 10,000 people, the message is still the same.
Yeah, I like that. And I think what's interesting is, and I'd be very interested in your view on this, the pandemic to some degree, I think, although there was a lot of bad that came with it, there was also a lot of reevaluation of what's important in life. And I think if one thing that came out of it that was a positive, if you could maybe use that term, is that a lot of people started to think about the life that they wanted to lead, and the fact that they weren't in charge of their own emotional mastery. And I think some companies have started to consider how important that emotional side of life is, how, being, like, people use the word authentic a lot these days, but actually being genuine and true and honest, and having a culture that's right, and focusing on the right things in a healthy way, which really does. There is a straight line to how that can positively impact a business, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The number one cost to corporations and businesses around the world is depression. Basically, it's mental health issues, and our emotional mastery is our mental health, because the way that our emotions work, and give me a second to actually explain this, because it's really the most valuable thing I have to share with anybody. Our thought habits dictate our life experience. What we allow to repeat in our thoughts is what dictates how we will actually feel. So how that works is our thought habits, which are predicated on our life experience, our family, what we were subconsciously and consciously thought, they dictate our mental state. And our mental state dictates our emotional state, which is energy and motion. And our emotional state dictates the way that we are vibrating, energy that we're resonating at, and that draws in a mirror reflection of our life experience. So if you notice, when you're in a crappy mood, crappy crap happens. It just sort of, like, that's the way that it works. And when you're in an incredible mood and you're uh giving off this a beautiful energy, you get that back in life, and that is how that works. And when people really understand that, it allows us to engineer a life experience that we actually enjoy, and that benefits everybody.
Yeah, and your work has helped put those sort of, everything from international brands to small firms sort of back on the map, to find their footing, to grow, to scale. And I know that you reference, you've turned products into, really exciting positioning, I suppose, if I can put a marketing hat on for a moment. One in
Oh
particular
yeah.
around superfoods, and bringing things
Hmm.
from, almost obscurity to becoming household names. And a lot of that you can trace back to teaching these executives and these businesses the importance of what you're doing. And I suppose the words that you used earlier, emotional intelligence, I think is on the radar today, whereas 10, 20 years ago, you didn't really hear people talking about emotional intelligence.
No, not at all. The work that I was doing has it's still considered really groundbreaking, and that was really more just I was just trying to come up with ways to solve problems and do it from an angle or position that would allow it to have a lasting effect. And what I found in my experience, going all the way back to the late 90s, was that when you approached things from an authentic place, when you looked for the emotion in it, when you led a solution with love, you created lasting results. So when I would sit with my clients, I didn't actually talk this way to them, but that is what I was thinking. That is what I was engineering, was how to re-engineer everything that they were doing so that it came from an authentic place, so that it touched people, so that it had a lasting effect, so that it had a lasting appeal. So in the case of that superfood, that was just an incredible product that needed a new story. It needed to be repositioned, and it needed to be brought to market in a way that was easy to understand, because they were making it overly complicated. And so, that's really what I was doing. And I did make, I'll just be frank, I made a conscious decision when I started Dreamweaver Brand Communications to only work with products and services that I felt were bringing something better to the world. Offering solutions to people's lives, were employing people. And so I think that helped a lot, because when at the root of things that you're doing, there is truth and honesty and appreciation and authenticity, it affects everything.
And what do you love about the work that you do? Because you yourself have been on a huge journey. There's been lots of transformation in your own life and lots of experience that you can draw on. But what do you love about what you do today?
I love seeing people discover or rediscover themselves, and that happens in a work environment, that happens working through brands. It's like you're giving people passion back for what they do, and pride, and that makes me really happy when I see someone's energy change because they have discovered something they didn't understand before, and which goes back to the education process. I think if everything I've always done has always been about teaching people and the public about better ways to do things, healthier ways to do things, that makes me really happy. So that's the mission of all the work I do now, to raise the level of consciousness and to help as many people learn how powerful they are over enjoying their life, and give them that skill set.
Yeah, and it's really about, you're really helping people to transform their lives. And I wanted to ask you about some of the vehicles or platforms that you use to do that, because whether it's books or speaking or courses, I know you have your own show as well. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Absolutely. I have my first book, which is called Unleash the Empress, came out a few months ago, that shares the spiritual practices that allowed me to really completely dramatically change my life, including losing 80 pounds, because I had put on a ton of weight while I was depressed and just not happy with life. I had lost my spark. And so in Unleash the Empress, I teach those practices. They're very fundamental. It's a good guideline when you are trying to begin a dramatic transformation in your life, in your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual worlds. And so there's that. And I also share my story in there, which I have a rather interesting story. It's colorful, I'll say that. But I also have shamanisis.com, which is where brands and people reach out to me for me to be able to teach them emotional mastery through workshops, retreats, and things like that. And then I have the Shaman Isis show, which I've been doing for a year now. It seems like so much longer, and it's been such a journey. I laugh when I think back to when I first started, because I was like, what am I doing? And it was the middle of the pandemic, and I was just like, I have to help, and so that's been an incredible journey. And I have interviewed some really amazing people on that show who tend to be in the spiritual mindfulness world, because at the end of the day, all the work that I'm doing is about raising consciousness and teaching people how to live happier, healthier lives. So I do have a tarot deck coming out soon, as well as another book, which I'm really excited about, called Memory Mansion, and that shares a lot of detail of my life growing up in the South, in America. So lots of projects, lots of work, and of course I have some workshops and things coming up very soon. So I keep busy.
Yeah, for sure. And Unleash the Empress is a great title. And in that, for people that have bought that book, or for people that are going to go out and find that book, yeah.
Yeah.
I know you have a 7-step process in that, and I'm not going to ask you to share everything here, but could you maybe just give us a couple of little ideas that people get from the book when it comes to that process and that sort of inspiration that helps them to transform their lives or to transform their team or their business? Because there's a lot of great advice packed into those 7 steps. Could you give us a little trailer or a little teaser about what people can expect?
Oh, absolutely. It's really fundamental, and I wanted it to be fundamental because I find that even though we've heard a lot of these things before, we don't actually understand why we're being told. So the first step in my book is about the first part of the first step is about drinking water, which sounds really silly to a lot of people, but until you actually understand how, that we're made up of over 90% water, once you get, it all calculated out, and you understand the physical repercussions of being dehydrated, and you begin to understand how not drinking water actually affects us, and it's really powerful stuff. Because one of the frustrations I used to have growing up was that people would tell me to do things, but they wouldn't actually explain to me why. And so in there, I talk about the power of water. I also talk about Dr. Emoto's water experiments, which are really fascinating. And they're starting to finally teach young people this. Dr. Emoto is quite famous for having done these experiments where he had water that he spoke positively to, and or played beautiful music to, and he had this water that was spoken negatively to, and played sort of raucous music, and then they froze the water and put it under a microscope, and the water that was spoken positively to looked like exquisite sacred geometry crystals. The water that was spoken negatively to looked like it had exploded. So the power of our energy and our words and our intention when we do things is incredible. When you understand that we are made of 90% water, how we speak to ourselves takes on profound importance in how our lives actually become. You know, it's incredible
Fascinating.
stuff. I'm getting chills. Yeah, it's chills, and that's scientific facts, folks. I know it sounds like hooey metaphysics nonsense, but most of then that's the thing I should mention about the book is that I based almost everything in that book is science based. There might be a few things that hint more towards the metaphysics, but it is science. So
Well,
yeah,
thank you for giving us a little look there inside the book cover. The other thing I
absolutely.
want to ask you is, because of your career, your experiences, and the work that you're involved in today, you obviously keep a pulse of what's going on. You must be researching and looking into things an awful lot, and you sort of seem to be right at the sort of forefront of these new sort of learnings, teachings, understandings, science. So how do you keep abreast of all that, Shaman? I mean, are you listening to audiobooks? Are you reading? Are you scouring the web? Are you meeting people and doctors and scientists? How does it work in today's busy world for you to actually onboard information?
I have to say that social media has really become a very powerful tool in my life. I host a Twitter Spaces, which is one of my favorite social media platforms in terms of meeting people across all. I mean, I meet wonderful authors there, like all the different things I do. I meet people who do that as well. Wonderful, powerful spiritual community, people who are incredible at what they do. And so I'm learning, not only do I host spaces and get to hear people's incredible shares, but I participate in a lot. And I'm also a huge fan of all the other social media platforms. I also watch a lot of video content. I've been writing so much the last 2 years between my own websites and articles and newsletters and books. I haven't read as much, but I'm sure I'll be getting back to that once I take a break from writing. So, there's so much wonderful information out there. I do tell all of my clients and businesses that I work with that the content that you allow into your life is incredibly influential in how you will feel. It will highlight emphasize whatever you are feeling already. So if you are in a negative state and you're listening to, let's say, mass media like the news, it's just going to make you more anxious and more fearful. And life is meant to be loved and enjoyed. It's not meant to be ridden on fear. Fear is one of the most insidious things that's being perpetuated through mass media in our world today, which I think a lot of us really got to see during the coronavirus closures. So be careful of the content that you consume.
I think that's sage advice. And when it comes to advice, there must be people in your life that you admire that have given you a helping hand along the way. Maybe people that have shared advice with you, or there might be advice that you often find yourself sharing with others. But when I ask you that question
Mm.
about people that you admire, about people that have helped you along the way, and about advice, what springs to mind when I ask you that question?
When I was going through my career, I was really fortunate that a woman, iconic woman in the fashion industry named Fern Malice, helped me several times. She was one of the most instrumental people. I called her my fairy godmother, my fashion fairy godmother, because her reference is allowed me to really enjoy an incredible career, which is really the thing that I hung on to for such a long time to enjoy life. I also look to the incredible Joe Dispenza and I'm going to go totally blank on their names. Mel Robbins, love Mel Robbins, fabulous. She's so real and authentic. Great advice. And there's several others within the Joe Dispenza, but of course I'm drawing a blank on their names. Sorry guys, you've been really influential this last year, but I can't remember exactly your names. So yeah, a lot of great people. I like to stay on the cutting edge, so I pay a lot of attention to people who are really leading, especially with the science.
And what about you touched on fashion there for a moment, and I talked about it earlier in terms of sustainable fashion, because you've had some endeavors there, haven't you? Could you maybe tell me a little
Mhm.
bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's funny that you brought up the coronavirus and closures because the coronavirus, it was seeing that we were about to close the country that caused me to really finally step up and wake up and change my life. I had started working on a sustainable collection because I was getting very frustrated. I had spent 20 years working in luxury, particularly fashion, and was getting sick of hearing the excuses about sustainable fashion. None of the brands were doing it. They weren't taking it seriously. There was no one in America other than Eileen Fisher who was even really doing much with it. And so I went and worked. I spent 2 years working on this sustainable collection. And just as they finally cut all my fabric and were about to sew it, I started being told by people I knew in Asia that they were closing. And I was like, I could see as a futurist, I saw what was coming. And I started telling people, no, they're going to close America. And I couldn't get them to just finish my collection. So right as that we closed, something I had spent years working on that was a tribute to my mother because she taught me about investment dressing and sustainability couldn't be finished. And I had never had a project collapse before. And that I was just crushed and I couldn't understand why we were all acting like, cattle and nobody had an opinion anymore. And we weren't allowed to speak our opinion. And I was like, and that caused me to have start my spiritual awakening. And then when I finally started to come out of it, I was able to bring the product to market because it finally got finished being made. And that's called Intention Fashion. Very proud to have finished that. It's a small collection meant just to speak to the fashion industry and say, guys, enough with the excuses. If a woman living in the United States can create a sustainable collection, then you guys are out of excuses. And so that was really the whole point of creating that small collection. So that's available online. And I also try very hard to make sure that all of the products that I do are eco-based.
Yeah, very important. Thanks for sharing that. The other thing I wanted to ask you as well is about your roadmap. So whether it's speaking, more writing, the new book, there seems to be lots going on in your world. So how do you plan? Are you day to day, week to week? Are you thinking years in advance? What's on your radar? What are you hoping to achieve as you look forward?
Oh, well, I definitely will be doing an international tour. I think long term and focus short term. Have that framework there, but really focus on what's happening now because it really helps to engineer the future. So I'll be definitely doing an international tour to help teach people about emotional mastery to help address the mental health crisis that we're experiencing globally, and just be a part of this shift towards us taking care of ourselves. And I'll be bringing my second book, Memory Mansion, to market along with my new tarot deck, to help people, divine the answers, because the answers are all from within us. Those are there's a lot of like sort of hoo-ha around tarot decks, but they're really divination tools to allow you to pull the answers out of yourself. So lots of great projects. The number one thing for me is helping as many people as possible, because the way that I experience life now is so beautiful, and I'm gonna actually get teary-eyed that if I can teach as many people as possible how to actually create a life that they love, like, that's everything for me. As many people as possible that I can touch and show how we engineer our experience with the way that we allow ourselves to think consciously and subconsciously. If I can help as many people as possible understand that and help them change their own lives, because they do it themselves, um, I will have I will have done what I was put on this earth to do, and that makes me really proud.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it's obvious that you're extremely passionate about this space. And I suppose as we come to the end of our time here today, the last thing I want to ask you is that is there anything else that you want to share with our audience? Anything else you want to double down on? But importantly, if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about the work that you do, the books, everything else, the show, where's the best place to point people to?
Absolutely. If you want to learn more about the work that I do, get links to my books and podcasts, please go visit shamanisis.com. There's also links to all my social media there. I'm very active. Look at me getting all passionate and teary. Look, Simon, you brought the tears out. So please go check out shamanisis.com. And then I would say, to double down on I spent a really long time in my life being very unhappy because I didn't understand the power that I had over my own happiness. So wherever you were at and whatever you were doing, whatever you are dealing with, understand that you choose how you feel. You are far more powerful than you have been taught to believe. You really do engineer and create the existence that you are experiencing. Own that power, never dim to fit in, and just go be the most badass version of yourself, because you are capable of so much more. Be fearless, be brave, and be bold.
Such an important note for us to end on today. So that brings us nicely to the end of this discussion on the global discussion. Thank you so much to everybody who's been watching or listening to us around the world. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do everything I need you to do to help support the podcast. And I hope that you'll join me back here for some more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. And all that remains for me to do is to thank Shaman Isis for all your time today, all your great advice. It's been wonderful to hear from you, and continued success with everything that you're doing.